Welcome to the Power Hour. Today's problem is how do you deal with pressure and expectations when people think your work is simple, but you know it's actually complex and messy behind the scenes? All right, so this is something that is a little messy because a lot of times people just assume things are a certain way. They think that, there's this problem. Let's talk about work, right? There's this problem at work and you're struggling and they don't know why, but they just see that you're not getting it done and it needs to get done. And it's like, well, they don't realize that the system or the problem that you're working on is actually multifaceted. There's a lot going on. You have to manage a couple other people who are just you're waiting on them, and maybe the equipment that you're working on needs upgraded or whatever it is. There's a lot of things that go into the reason why it's not working. So now you have a complicated system, a complicated set of issues, and you have somebody who's just like, hey, I need this thing done from you, and they don't know why because it's more complex, but to them, they just see it as it's done or it's not done. So how do you manage this when, you know, the real problem here is that they, whether it's your supervisor or somebody else, they want something complete. They want something done. They want to say, hey, when is this going to be done? And you might not know the answer because you might have a lot of variables as to when it's going to get done. And this can frustrate you. This can cause you to feel like you're working by yourself. You don't have the support you need. Well, it's messy because the problem that you have is complicated. So it just needs to be communicated clearly that, you might be reporting to them a status, a work status, but that doesn't mean that the work is progressing, right? So you might be able to give them a progress report, but the progress on the actual work is not happening. There's not a lot of motion or movement in the actual issue if you're at a crossroads. So also, when it comes to timelines, being as broad as possible can be helpful, right? Like, well, I'm waiting on this and this. What's his name said it could be next week that he can get back to me, so then I can start doing this again, etc. Trying to give timelines to the next progression is what's worked for me usually. Like, obviously they want it done as soon as possible, but if you can be like, hey, yada yada yada, this is the progress report. In 6 days from now I'll have yada yada yada, and then we can talk again and I'll give you an update. Then they at least have a timeline of when they can expect another progress report. Because at the end of the day, all they want to know is something that they can either A, tell their boss, their superior, somebody that's asking them, or B, if they're truly the top of the ladder of whoever's requesting this thing from you, they just want to know when it can be done. They don't care about the details necessarily. They just want to know how close you are to being complete. So if you can't tell them that definitively, giving a timeline for the next update is usually good to get you out of the situation. Also, the complexity behind the issue that you might be dealing with and the pressure, you're the only one that knows what's going on because you're the one working the problem and you're the only one dealing with the expectations of others, basically. So you can't control what others are thinking about you in the situation. So you might feel judged by your peers about why it's not done. That you can't control that. You can't spend your time, especially if you're behind or if you're frustrated or trying to figure something out. You can't spend your time focusing on the perception of others and what they think about your status on the project, because you need to spend your time focused on your actual next steps for completing the problem that you're having. So if that means breaking down your, like I do this often where I get overwhelmed with projects because there's a lot of things. You might be managing people, like I said, or assets. I like to break down into direct steps of what is my next goal. And that also works perfect for your progress report too, with whoever you need to speak to, because if my next goal is I need to work on this hardware and test something, I will make sure that that is my focus for both the progress report and my immediate steps today. That's what I'm going to do. But if I'm also waiting on somebody else, and this person's waiting on me, and I'm trying to get this upgrade, I keep that in mind, and I keep those notes handy, but I try and keep a one mind track of this is what I need to focus on first, because this might be dependent on other variables. So knowing your next immediate step and also relaying that as a progress report can kind of give you a better picture to tell others and give others the impression that you are focused and your problem is structured in a way that's going to lead to success. Nobody might not know when that is specifically, but it will show that you have a plan, you have a next step, and you're aware of the fact that progress needs to be communicated if you aren't able to communicate when exactly something will be complete. They think it's an easy button to just say it's done, and you know that it's a system that needs worked. There's a difference between the two.